We're here to talk about Project Utopia, some tips and tricks on how to run projects better, how to run your team better, how to treat your clients better, how to do all those things. So hello. So who are we? My name's Jesse, as Raphael said. I really want to thank everybody that's put a lot of effort into making this thing happen here. This conference is amazing. This is my first time out to Amsterdam, but I've been to both US tracks, and it's really awesome being out here. So my history is I spent 5 or 6 years working in healthcare prior to getting into a couple smaller companies. And I've been at Vehicle now for about 2 years, building all kinds of stuff in all kinds of different domains, from real estate to healthcare to helping people, the people at WeWork right now. So that's my story.
Hi. My name is actually Caryn. Thanks, Raphael. No big deal. I've been with Vehicle for about 4 years. I got my start in advertising, did some marketing and some business and some digital media space type things, and sort of landed in a UX role and doing front-end development because that's where the cool people hang out, obviously. No, best people. This is my second time here. I came to Laracon EU 2 years ago. Quite a bit smaller, not nearly as cool. This venue is amazing. Again, like, whoever found this, awesome job. Very cool. And that's me. And we're going to talk about how to run an awesome project.
So we basically took a look at what we had done in the last 2 years with Vehicle. We started out, when I started 2 years ago, there was 4 of us in a really small, cramped office. And now we're at 18 people in a giant office and growing sort of strong. So we took a look over the last 2 years of the stuff that we've done and the experiences we've had, the ups, the downs, the failures, the successes, and tried to sort of put all of that into a talk so we could sort of share that with the world.
So you're going to hear a few familiar terms for anyone who has run around Agile groups or you've heard the terminology thrown around. We use some of the same terminology, but as it's Agile, we are Agile with it, and it's our own flavor of it. Take from it what you will, but again, with Agile, use what works for you and ditch what doesn't, and play with it and make it work. And we're just going to talk a little bit about how it works for us, and hopefully you can gain something cool from it and incredibly useful on your projects that you can start using immediately. More importantly, I want to make sure everyone understands that this is definitely a talk for everybody. If you are on an enterprise team, if you're doing freelance, if you are working at a small company, really no matter what kind of project or what kind of team you're on, this is incredibly useful. There's things that you can learn from this and you can start applying immediately. So one of the major cornerstones of how we are able to do the structure that we're able to do is, most importantly, we have to find the right clients that work for us. Not every client will work, and not every project will work for our process. It's very much a collaborative effort from Vehicle to make sure that everything that we are working on works within our process and all of the projects fit within that. We really want to be an extension of the client's team. So the ability to say no and turn away projects while we don't like doing it really suits the process, and that's what gives us the freedom to be able to do the things that we do in this process.
Yeah, and one of the parts of collaborating with our clients is part of the billing method. A lot of people have asked us about this after our talk, so we tried to include it. So the way that we bill our clients is sort of an upfront process. We don't do long-term contracts. We don't do fixed bid, nothing like that. So basically the math breaks down to, if you want a developer for the week, you pay us for the week, and that's it. If you like us and you like the process and how the progress is going, continue paying and we'll continue working. But it gives us and them the freedom to sort of walk away at any time. If we feel that the client's not going to work out, they don't owe us any money. If they feel that we're not going to work out, then they're not out a giant contract, and there's no obligation on either side.
So some of the major things that you're going to learn here, among all of the little things and how cool Vehicle is also how to work collaboratively as a part of the client's team. We aren't a gun for hire. We aren't a person that lives off in a silo somewhere that will take any sort of check and then just reappear in 6 months and suddenly you have a new product. We work collaboratively as an extension of the client's team, and this allows us to have a high amount of trust. And that's a huge thing that I want to make sure everyone understands is be on the client's side. The client isn't the enemy. Work with them to deliver whatever it was that you agreed that you were going to deliver at the beginning of the project.
And two things from the development side that we really strongly believe in is the value of pair programming and how we do that sort of daily, day in, day out. We're always looking for opportunities to sort of pair up on problems, pair up on code, meetings and things like that. And also sprint management, so how to properly manage your sprints, how not to get off track, how to delegate work and break down features into smaller workable units.
How many people here have been in meetings? Lots of you. We're going to talk about meetings, and it's not going to suck, I promise. It's going to be amazing. We're just going to talk about how to plan a meeting, how to facilitate a meeting, how to talk to clients and stakeholders, how to wrangle your team because everyone's playing Pokemon, how to run an effective meeting, and how to walk out of a meeting with some tangibles that will give you something to actually work on instead of walking out of a meeting being like, we had a meeting. Have effective meetings. We're also going to go over some design principles around planning. Design build and product design really at its core just revolves around the idea of planning. And we're going to go over some of the principles that you can apply throughout your project to make sure that you're actually building things from a design build point of view.
All right, so how many of you have had a client walk into your office with a vision like this? Right? They walk into your office and they go, all right, so we're going to build a Lamborghini. And you go, okay. A lot of clients come in and they have a huge vision. They've been dreaming about this project. They've got funding for this project. It's their baby. It's their vision. And we get a lot of these people who come in and we sort of want to share their goal. We want to understand their goal. We want to understand that they want to get to this point. However, that's not always going to work immediately. We need to sort of make them understand that, hey, let's get something working rather than trying to aim for the end goal right away. And so this is usually what we try to provide our clients up front. Something that looks and feels like a car, but is not a high-performance, highly tuned supercar, the first month that you've been working with us. You need to set reasonable expectations, and a lot of the processes that we use are concentrated on how do you get the immediate business value to your client without them sort of feeling like, you know what, I had this grand vision and I'm being let down.
So how do we do this? We break each project down into 4 main sections. You have a kickoff, which is essentially what are we doing? Now, bearing in mind that right before the kickoff, we also have sometimes what are called expeditions, whatever you want to call them. Will it work? How many times have you had a client come up to you and you aren't sure if the project is right for you and they give you some sort of line like, just look at the code? Probably a few people have had those sorts of interactions. So there are often, right before kickoff or around the same time as kickoff in the project, take a look at it. Does it make sense? Do your due diligence, do some homework, take a look at what they have, what their vision is, who the market is, who the users may be. Look at these sorts of things, and then have your kickoff meeting, which is essentially your what you're doing meeting, planning, that sort of thing. And then you have your discovery phase, which is just learning about the domain, learning about what the product is, what the vision is, the business goals, those sorts of things.
And then after you've done all of that setup, you can finally get down to getting into your sprint cycles and getting comfortable with demoing and getting work done and getting proper estimations done and delegating work and things like that. And then onto that is hopefully shipping something.
All right, so you've just started your project and you're going to do your kickoff meeting. Most important thing in a kickoff meeting, bring the people you should be bringing. Bring the people on your team who make sense to be there, whether it be DevOps front end, back end. If you need a biz dev person there, you need a marketing person. Whoever it is on your team that you think may need to be in the meeting, bring them. If you aren't sure, bring your entire company, because why wouldn't you? Also make sure that whoever is coming from the client side or stakeholders, if you're in-house, that sort of thing, make sure they're all there. Identify who they are, what their roles are, what their influence may be on the project. Document these things because it may come up to bite you in the ass later. Believe me, we've all been in a situation where suddenly some name drops in a meeting and you're like, who has an opinion? Who is this person? Why were they not in this meeting? And why aren't we in contact with them regularly?
Yeah, we've had some big failures there where sometimes it's often the person who's the money holder who we haven't heard of until 6 months into the project, and suddenly it's, this stakeholder is really wanting to see something, and it's like, well, we've never heard from them before. We don't even know who they are. Part of this is also domain knowledge. Getting an intro to the domain in the kickoff. I've worked in healthcare, I've worked in real estate, I've worked in all of these things, but my domain is programming. I'm a very good programmer. I'm terrible at selling real estate. So what you want to do here is sort of dip your toes into, what does their domain look like? How do they speak to each other? What concepts are they discussing? When we've had meetings with those types of people, it's very fluid for them. As fluid as it is for all of us to talk about programming, it's very fluid for them to talk in their domain terminology to each other. And so you kind of have to sort of insert yourself into there and try to get as much knowledge as you can out of them.
One of the most important things you can do in a kickoff meeting or in any meeting, ask lots of questions. Ask tons and tons of questions. Ask more than you think you need to ask. What you're aiming for here is any overarching goals. You want to make sure that you're identifying little things as well as big things that the client's expecting. Make sure you are asking enough questions that you feel exhausted and they feel like they're answering the same questions sometimes. Make sure you're actually asking all of those sorts of things.
And one thing that we try to do early on is set reasonable client expectations. Rather than trying to aim for dates or anything like that, we use a lot of milestones. The other thing that we do not subscribe to is estimating anything upfront at all. This goes hand in hand with our upfront billing. We're going to work for you for a week. That's as far out as we're about to estimate. I can tell you roughly what I'm going to get done in a week. No, I will not tell you what I have done in 2 months, because you know and I know that it's all wrong. It's all, it's guesswork at that point.
Document. No one likes writing things down, but write it down anyway. A lot of the use of documentation in this sort of format is just keep yourself in check, keep your team in check. If you're not sure about something down the line, or if you don't remember if a client answered a question, go back to your documentation. This is just point form, doesn't have to be a great big wiki. Take notes and actually write down things like priorities, things like milestones, things like, is it going to be a Lamborghini? Or did they sort of talk about maybe a blimp? Because that's a little bit different than a Lamborghini. You'll identify things in these meetings that will make things clearer in the future as well as in the present. So make sure you're documenting these things in whatever scale makes sense for you.
So the next part of that is sort of after getting comfortable with the client, start planning out a work schedule. What is it going to look like? Are you going to use 1 week sprints? Are you going to do 2 week sprints? Are they on vacation for the first 2 weeks of your project? These are all really important things to know that most people don't think of up front. They sort of, an email comes through on a Wednesday and it's like, oh, by the way, I'm on vacation for the next 2 weeks. And it's like, we can't actually do discovery if you're on vacation. So that's a really important part of that. And coming into that is sort of figure out how you're going to communicate with the client. Are you going to use Slack? Are you going to use HipChat? Maybe you're going to use email, whatever. Try and decide early on what is the means of communication. How are we going to document things? Are you going to use Trello, GitHub issues, those types of things?
So a big part of how this works is you build a rapport with your client. You're building trust with them. They want to know that they're handing over their baby or their idea into good hands. You need to discuss with them as many things as possible, including where might they see progress. Are you doing pen and paper and they have to come into your office to see the progress? Are you doing it on a whiteboard? Are you doing InVision? Are you doing staging sites? Can they see things on GitHub? Are they familiar with GitHub? Do you need to have more meetings to discuss what these things look like that they're seeing on their screens to actually inform them about the progress of the project and those sorts of things? Build the rapport early so that later you can have a little bit less communication and a little bit more collaboration.
So over the last couple of years, we've drummed up a little bit of a checklist that we used just to start out a project really quickly. This is something that you can jump into a call with a client and 10 minutes later you have it filled out and you have a fairly good idea of what you might be diving into. So a lot of this stuff sort of hinges around issue tracking, communication tools. Do they have anything set up initially? Are they already on Slack? Do they have any kind of bug tracker or anything like that? If it's a greenfield project, probably not, but it's good to know these things up front. Another big one, a huge one that I can't put more emphasis on is version control. We have so many people that are FTPing us over things, or the often thing is, oh yeah, we'll grab it from the FTP server, put it in a zip file and send it to you. And it's like, you need to get it under version control as quick as possible. And sometimes that's a lot of education to the client as well, teaching them about version control and teaching them that the depth of that subject is quite complex. Things we also look for is sort of reproducible, documented development environments. Do they have a Vagrant machine or anything that already exists that we can pull in and start using? Do they have automated execution of testing? Do they have Circle CI? Are they on Travis? What types of those things exist? And what does their deployment process look like? That's another scary one where there's a lot of people who are pulling down that FTP code, putting it in a zip file and sending it to you and expecting they will unzip a file and re-FTP it to the same spot, which, those are the types of things we like to get under control very quickly.
So one of the ways that you're going to get things moving in the beginning of your project and then throughout your project to make sure that it's going smoothly are meetings. How many people like being in meetings? One person. That's fabulous. No one really likes being in a meeting because typically they don't run very well. How many people have been in an incredibly inefficient meeting? Most of us, right? People are on their phones. People are answering emails. Maybe they're playing Pokemon because there might be a Pokemon in the office. Important things. The key for running an efficient meeting is have an intent, have a goal. There are different kinds of meetings. There's different ways you can facilitate a meeting. There's different objectives for a meeting. Is this a discovery meeting and you just need to have a chat about general things? What's the general idea here behind this project? Is it more specific? We're going to demo something for you. We're going to show you something very specific. It's going to be a little bit technical. It's going to move a little quickly. Identify what kind of meeting it is and what you hope to get out of it early on and set a schedule for the meeting. Make sure you hit those benchmarks while you're in the meeting and they'll run a lot smoother, or at least have someone in the meeting who knows how to facilitate a meeting this well. Another thing that you have to make sure that you're doing in a meeting, and this often runs into a lot of snags with some people, is asking the questions. If you aren't sure what you should be asking in a meeting, you should be a little bit aware before you walk into it and make a couple notes. Do you need to know about version control? Do you need to know if they're using some sort of error logging? Do you need to know these things ahead of time? And if you know you need to know them, write them down. And if you notice previous meetings that you needed to know those things, document them somewhere and then just grab it. And then you don't have to write it down before this meeting. You have some sort of template that you're working off of. A key thing for making sure you're asking enough whys, and the reason that you're asking enough whys to questions is you want to find out more than just the symptoms. I'm getting blue screens every time I open Overwatch. Why? Looks like a graphics problem. Why? I haven't updated my drivers in a while. You're starting to identify things beyond just symptoms. Get to the root of what the problem is, and then you can start moving towards solving that problem in the project that you're actually working on. Another cornerstone here, and this is a thing that a lot of people have issues with, is saying no. There are a lot of resources online for how to actually say no to a client. I could just say, go read the entire chapter in Clean Coder about saying no, because it is fantastic. But what I will say is, don't be afraid to say no, because that makes you a team player. Don't say yes if you know better, because it's going to bite you in the ass later, and your client is not going to trust you when it does bite you in the ass.
All right, so we've done a lot of meetings and sat around a whole bunch and talked and talked and talked. Now it's time to do some discovery, and this is where you actually get your hands, hopefully, on their code. This is where you can actually start taking really actionable steps to getting the project started. So some of that stuff is getting involved in domain knowledge. Do most people understand what I'm saying when I'm talking about domain knowledge? If you saw Mitchell's talk yesterday. A lot of that is sort of pulling the business rules out of the person who knows about how the business functions. That stuff is very, very important. The other part of it is sort of getting into the code, like I said, discover how that code functions. Is it good code? Is it clean code? Is it not? What are the expectations that we have for going forward on the project? Fill out your checklist. Explore different implementations on what libraries and what frameworks might you bring to the table to get the project actually accomplished. Start brainstorming this stuff, start writing it down, start playing with it. If you want to use Bootstrap, then try to use Bootstrap. If you want to use Laravel, try to use Laravel. Take a couple hours, set those things up, play with it a little bit, and decide yes or no.
So this is also when you're going to find out a little bit more about your users, the people who are going to be using whatever it is that you're building. Because at the end of the day, you're usually not building this for yourself. You're usually building it for some human somewhere. Do some research on these things. This is also where you're going to start building quite a bit of trust with your client. And one of the ways that you can do this is collaborating with them. Work with them to do something that they can see, do something tangible. What I like doing are, especially very early on, are called user flows. There's a couple different names for these. The basic idea is you take something as simple as perhaps Post-it notes, and you write down different parts of the application, you put them up on a whiteboard, and you draw some paths between them. What you're doing is you're validating the idea with your client or your stakeholders, or whoever it may be, that you're understanding what it is that you're building in a very cheap, efficient way that visualizes it so that you can move things around, you can edit it, do things that communicate that you actually understand what it is that you're moving toward. And the nice thing about doing this early on is that it takes about 10 minutes to write some things on a sticky, and you don't have to have good handwriting, or you can do it in some sort of software. But this builds rapport with your client early. So once you're done doing all of the moving around and the research and the planning and all the fun whiteboarding and things like that, what you're going to get into is your actual work, so the sprint cycle, or whatever you happen to call it. And this is made up of 5 very basic ideas around planning your sprint, doing the sprint itself, demoing to your client, making sure you're validating what it is that you're building, and then doing a retrospective on it. And we'll get into what a retrospective is if anyone's unfamiliar and that sort of thing. And then shipping it, hooray, because we all just ship at the end and it's perfect. And then you repeat it as necessary.
Yeah, so getting into planning a sprint, this is arguably the most important part of the sprint. Not necessarily as important as getting the actual work done, but this is going to set you up for success or failure, early on. So what you want to do to start is identify some of the highest impact work that you can get done for your client. Your first sprint may not be simple, but it will hopefully be high impact work. It's going to be you setting up those frameworks that you've chosen, getting all the infrastructure in place, maybe getting a Sentry account, starting your logging, those types of things. It may not feel like traction, but it's very, very important. So getting that work identified is super, super important. The other thing is that we don't use estimates, but we do sort of get to estimating scale when we're finally planning the sprint out. Do you think this is going to be a day or two? Do you think it's going to take you all week? Those types of small estimates. It makes it simpler to sort of delegate your work later when you start to prioritize, okay, who's working on what? Which is another very important part of that. Don't put front-end people on back-end tasks. Don't put back-end people on front-end tasks unless there's an explicit, discussion with those people where, okay, maybe you're a back-end person and this project you actually do want to learn doing some front-end stuff. That needs to be a discussion to be had. That can't be, all right, well, I'm going to force you to do this stuff. That will go down in flames almost every time. Another thing to do is make sure you're under-committing and over-delivering. Over-committing is the worst. Especially if you get into a cycle of it. A lot of people talk about sprint velocities and things like that. You're going to be over or under velocity all the time. Your client's going to notice it. You're going to constantly be justifying as to, well, we didn't really quite hit the target this time. And you're going to be doing that so often that your client is going to get used to that expectation. What you want to do is sign up for less and then deliver as much or more than what you've signed up for. That really helps it go a lot smoother. The other thing to understand is that if your client pivots inside of a sprint, and we've all had this happen where the client comes back to you and says, actually, we should try something different on this. Make sure and have a discussion up front with them when they bring the idea up that they understand the ramifications of that. They understand that, look, the beginning of the week, we agreed to this much work, and now you're changing that. So do you understand, yes or no, that the impact on how much we're going to get done this week has now been changed?
How many people here pair with a designer? Aww. How many people here pair with a developer? About the same, really? Come on. A key to making sure that you're actually covering both sides of it is accessing the people that you have around you. This could mean people on your team, but it could also mean people in your network. Pair programming, the way that we refer to it, it's easy to just say pair programming or pairing or those sorts of things. But it's really just working with the people that you have around you to make sure that you're not just working in a silo. So this is something that we do quite frequently throughout the project. We will bring other people in without necessarily assigning them to tasks, just to make sure that the perspective is actually being represented for each specific problem that you're trying to solve. And this also helps you make responsible decisions. You aren't just sitting in a room somewhere bashing your head against a problem deciding, I think I'm just gonna do what Facebook does because Facebook did it. Make responsible decisions and use other people to bounce your ideas off of, even if it's just rubber ducking or something along those lines. And make sure that you're also delegating tasks. Work with other people on your team who are on the project to make sure that the appropriate people are getting the appropriate tasks. And a key to doing this is making sure you have frequent stand-ups. How many people here do something along the lines of stand-ups? How many people here don't know what stand-ups are? Okay. A couple people. All right. So stand-ups are basically just a summary at the beginning of your day that sort of frames what it is that you're going to work on around, here's what I'm going to do, here are some struggles I might have, and I might need some help with a couple things. That's the general idea of stand-ups. It's just to keep you on track while you're working on things, especially if you're doing multiple different things with different parts of the project or there's lots of people on the team. It just frames everything in a nice organized way. So make sure you're doing this. And in the middle of your workday, make sure you're taking breaks. Get up off of your computer and go catch a Pokemon. Do something that isn't just sitting in front of your computer. This will recharge you. It will make everyone's day better because you won't be screaming at Git because it did something ridiculous that you don't understand, or maybe you do and you just hate yourself for past used decisions. Take breaks frequently so that your batteries are recharged all the time.
Another thing to focus on while you're mid-sprint is that you are building software for humans. And the other thing to focus on is the humans all around you as well. We really, really want to emphasize the stuff that's pair programming, collaboration, get in touch with other people. Try not to sit and do that 8-hour workday all by yourself in an office alone. It's not good for you, it's not good for the project. Sometimes it's great to crack down, but that's very few times that's going to lead to more success. Another thing that I've sort of taken in my mind is a little bit of what would you call it? Like a lesson from Git. In that I try to think about feature branches not only within Git, but in my mind. When I'm doing stand-up in the morning, I try to sort of branch my mind into the feature that I'm working on so that I stay focused. And rather than trying to think about the big picture of the project all the time, I try to bring that back and to say, like, okay, all I'm doing today is this one single feature. This is really, really important, and I can kind of ignore the rest of the stuff until I get back into sprint planning, or I'm in retrospective, or even onto the next task type thing. And that's still the same with committing things in my mind. A lot of that stuff is while you're working in the code, sometimes you'll lead yourself to discovering more about the business logic and things like that. Try and commit that to memory, write it down, and then try and commit it to someone else as well. The way that Git works can also be the way that you work. So I sort of talked about, any kind of domain knowledge or things like that you discover throughout the project. Make sure you document them, make sure you share them with other people. Amidst your sprint, this is a great time to start doing testing. I know a lot of people are doing testing, a lot of people aren't doing testing, but this is a great time to start looking at what kind of testing do we need to do, what kind of code testing versus usability testing versus all those types of things. Make sure you're paying attention to it, don't ignore it. The other piece of it is, and it's a phrase I think Adam Wathans talked about it a lot too, is that perfect is the enemy of good. You don't want to get caught up in trying to be absolutely perfect at this one thing in your sprint, because that can absolutely get you off track. And that's part of the collaborating with others. If you find yourself chasing that perfect, if I just push these pixels a little bit further, it's going to be perfect, and the user is just going to love it that much more. A lot of the time, the user won't even notice. And you'll find that out the hard way if you do end up chasing that.
So a cornerstone of what I like to make sure is on all of our sprints and throughout all of our projects is this idea of product design. And the core of it, like I said earlier, is just around planning. Before you do anything, plan it. Draw it, sketch it, talk about it, do an interpretive dance about it. Do whatever you need to do just to make sure you're getting your idea out in front of someone else so that you can communicate about it and you can validate the idea with someone else. It's smart. It's cost effective. It's easy. Wireframing is very easy. Anyone who wants to debate me on that, come talk to me, because I do a wireframing workshop and I'd love to show you how to do wireframing. It's very easy. It lets you get feedback from a lot of different perspectives, depending on who you bring into a room, in front of a whiteboard, or in front of software, whatever you happen to be using. You'll get some really cool perspectives from different people on your team and from the client about what they envisioned the UI looking like. Use these people and come up with some fresh ideas that you yourself can't come up with on your own. This is key to making sure that before you get into expensive coding, you're doing the proper planning and you're validating your ideas. Another key thing here is when you start looking at UI, you'll start noticing some language. Centralize your language and start documenting those things as well. This will come from your domain knowledge, it'll come from talking to your clients, it'll come from talking to your teammates. Centralize the language that you're using, and a lot of you have probably noticed this on projects. You'll start using the same terminology depending on the project. Document these things. Anyone onboarding later will have an easier time understanding the lexicon that you're using, and you'll also be able to communicate your wireframes and your plans and things like that later on without having to annotate them and explain them and things like that.
Just another comment there. We've had a lot of discussion internally about design sprints specifically, rather than the first sprint that you do, jumping into the code and just trying to get something out there under the browser. What we found is that clients actually enjoy design sprints, especially if you get them involved with it. And that sort of works into the idea that our billing is upfront. If they walk away the first week and we've given them a really good design sprint, we've tried to understand their domain, and we've really tried to sort of embed ourselves in their team, they feel a lot more comfortable going forward, rather than just, hey, we kind of talked to you for like an hour at the beginning of the week, and the end of the week is, here's some jQuery stuff to click on in the browser. So don't be afraid to do design sprints. They're really, really good. And so once you've done all of your sprint work, now it's time to demo. So time to strut your stuff, time to be confident in the work that you've done, hopefully, and make sure you show it off. The other thing is to make sure before you go into a demo, refer to the priorities, refer to your sprint plan, refer to everything that you committed to during the week, because we all know, we've had it, where the client comes in and slams the piece of paper down in front of you that says, you were going to do X, Y, and Z, and I only see X and Y. So make sure that you actually did get all the things done before you go into that demo. And know, maybe this is something for your retrospective, but sort of talk about it afterwards. If you didn't get everything done, then why? This goes back to, make sure you undercommit and overdeliver. If you didn't get everything done, make sure you know why, and make sure you adjust the things that you're going to do going forward.
So referring again back to your sprint plan and what you had agreed to do before your demo and things like that, have an idea that your team and yourself and your client are all aware, and phrase it like this at the beginning of your demo, and it often will help. Here's what we agreed to do, and here are all the things that we got done, and here are the things that we didn't. Frame each of your demos around what the current problem was that you were trying to solve and how you solved it, and how you worked with the client to solve these things. This will make sure that the client feels like they were a part of the process and you didn't just take their idea and deliver them something that they weren't expecting and that they aren't happy with. This puts everyone at the same table and makes everyone on the same level, and it will help you throughout the project, and especially in future demos, in future sprints, that the client will understand all of the things that I'm seeing here are as a result of the collaboration that I had with you. And it will make everyone feel accountable for the same things. This will just make everyone's lives a lot easier. And you'll also get really good feedback at these demos, assuming they're framed well. Show off everything that you did do. And if all you have is pen and paper or some ideas or some concepts, get some feedback on those as well. This is a good opportunity to have a very focused meeting where all you're doing is getting feedback, and allow room for critical feedback as well, and welcome it. You'll get really good feedback if you open yourselves to critical feedback so that you actually learn something moving forward in your sprints. So who in here knows what a retrospective is? Or a postmortem? Okay. So for those who aren't aware, retrospective is essentially a reflection. You worked on some things and you want to reflect on how it went. What did you learn from it? What went well? What didn't go well? How many people could think of a project they're on right now that they could retro some negative things? Positive things? Awesome. People should definitely retro on these things. It will close off whatever your sprint is and whatever you're working on a positive note. Positive even if there are negative things, because you want to walk away from a retro understanding all the stuff that you were victorious on and maybe all of the things that you could learn something from and apply in future sprints. Learn from these things and be honest with each other. Don't just sit there git blaming and figuring out who it was that broke the entire project or caused the pivot or threw the project out the window and suddenly we're doing Facebook for cats. Do a positive retro that comes across as critical but positive in that same light.
Yeah, so some really good questions to ask inside of here. How were all of these things? So feature creep, scope creep, and pivots, we sort of define these things loosely as feature creep would be something that is brand new features that are requested sort of mid-sprint. The client either walks in or emails you and says, oh yeah, let's add the ability to do something totally different. And you're like, okay, we'll file that under new features. Scope creep is taking the existing features that you already have and kind of pushing the boundaries on them. Oh, and it needs to do this, and it should do that, and this functionality. Pivoting is actually changing the direction entirely and saying, well, last week we were working on the shopping cart, next week we're going to do, the homepage. Those types of things are things that you need to get a handle on and things that you can really talk about in retros. This is a time to be honest. This is a time to say, hey, the client actually emailed me and said he wanted a brand new feature, so I stopped everything I was doing and I just went and did it. And did that go well or not? Caryn can talk about communication.
I like talking about communication. I love talking to clients. I think clients are a fount of terrible ideas. It's awesome. But how do you talk about those things? Clients do have awful ideas. Teammates have awful ideas. Talk about how that communication went. How did you deal with it? How did the people who were on the project say no? Did anybody say no? Did they allow the client to just railroad the project? Why? How did that happen? Talk about how did communication go? Two-way communication, not just on the team, but also with the client and anyone else who happens to be involved. Did somebody half your budget? Let's talk about that. Talk about all of the things that came across in any form of communication during that sprint. And also talk about collaboration. How did you work with each other? How did you delegate tasks? How did you ask for help? Talk about all of these things in each retro to create more of an environment that allows you to have successful sprints moving forward.
All right, experiments. So is anyone currently running experiments inside of any other projects? A couple people? Okay, good stuff, good stuff. So experiments are something that we at Vehicle have really subscribed to, sort of up and down, vertically, horizontally, everywhere within our company, we're trying to experiment. And so this quote I love from Kent Beck: for each desired change, make the change easy, and then make the easy change. A lot of people will attribute this to coding, to programming. You can also do this with experiments on your team. If you're constantly experimenting, if you're constantly saying, hey, last week we did a certain sprint plan, next week I want to try something different, if you're constantly doing that, then change seems easy, and making changes turns into a very, very easy thing. So we at Vehicle actually do company-wide retros every week, where we try to do experiments throughout the whole company every week. And that allows us every single week to make different changes to the company. We can change the structure, we can change what kind of lunch plans we have, those types of things. You can also do those inside of projects as well. Once everyone's used to that culture on the top level, you can sort of granularly dive down into the different projects. And that's been really, really successful for us. So.
Then you ship, yay! So you did it. You shipped your thing, it's going awesome, now what? So this is the stage where you figure out what you're doing with errors and how you're going to handle feedback. Sentry, Bugsnag, Zendesk, whatever it is that you happen to be using, apply it here. And have a plan for what you're going to do when these things come across. Lily had a fantastic talk about what you do once you have people actually using it. What do you do with those humans who are using what it is that you built? Access those people and have a plan for what you're going to do with the data that comes across, and figure out what your future iterations are going to be based on those things, whether it happens to be A/B testing with the new users, usability testing. Depending on your project, there's always a plethora of options for how you can handle the humans who are going to be using the application that you just built, and then iterate on it. So, to wrap up, which is 4 basic things around running a successful project. You have planning, structure, communication, and collaboration.
And hopefully a lot of you are more comfortable with some ideas around how to plan meetings, how to work more collaboratively, pair programming, managing meetings, designing and building products, and managing the sprints that we so ever love to cling to. If you guys have any questions or anything like that, or you like any of these ideas, or you dislike any of these ideas, we'll be around. Yeah, let us know. Give us some feedback on what you think about these things. Looks like we have 5 minutes left. Yeah, so I don't know if you want to do some questions now. Questions, comments, concerns? Do you disagree, agree? Go to the kitty.
Hi there.
Hello.
I just want to ask, what kind of wireframing software would you recommend?
Sorry, say that again?
What kind of wireframing software?
Oh, what kind of wireframes?
I got it. If I use software at all, it tends to be Balsamiq. I like that it's drag and drop. I like that it has iOS elements, which tend to be pretty handy. We don't do a ton of native, but it's nice having the option in there. I've also used Agile. I have dabbled a little bit more with prototyping with InVision, but I tend to use it more for interactive prototyping than wireframing. But Balsamiq, I think, is the nicest as far as making sure that there's not so much fidelity that the client is concerned that everything is Comic Sans, because everything in Balsamiq is Comic Sans. So it's nice to keep the client sort of focused on the architecture of what it is you're building and the structure of things, as opposed to pixel pushing at that stage.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, I just have 2 comments, one on meetings. What I discover is that sometimes they ask you to be involved in a meeting without sharing their agenda. So you're asked to spend an hour and you have no idea what the agenda is, even up front of the meeting or in the meeting themselves. And after a while you think, why am I here? What am I doing here? And I think it's good to have the agenda up front and also ask if you can add something to the agenda yourself, so you can get something from the meeting yourself as well. So you get some more value. You get some exchange of values. That's what I experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Just if for anybody who didn't hear, I happen to wholly agree. Make sure if you have an agenda for the meeting that the agenda is known. Make it public. What is the purpose of the meeting? And make sure that anyone in the meeting has a purpose and they know what their purpose is, and help facilitate them asking questions that they may have or things like that. Make sure that the meetings, I guess, have a little bit of structure that's public as well.
Yeah, as well that in the meeting everybody should be felt equal,
Yes.
not on a different level.
Yes.
So you can exchange values instead of being pushed values, or they gain a lot from it and you are left behind with a lot of work on your plate or anything else. So I think that helps. Another one about the retrospective. Sometimes it helps not to focus on the things you have done, but how the team collaborated. So you shift away from the nitpicking or the finger pointing towards how can we progress. And I think, you can make it a game, gamify it a little bit. So there are certain scenarios for that. So each time you have a different scenario and you pick certain things the manager or your project leader can work on to progress the team a little bit further, instead of picking on the way you work, more to the way you collaborate. So that's my point. I like that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool.
Hi there.
Hi.
2 questions. You bill like every week. You say we only, the fast thing we go is 1 week. So what about when you have like a big project, let's say a budget of €500,000, and it will take up to 6 months? Do you discard? Do you run off? Or do you just say, okay, no, we still bill 1 week? Because
Yeah, most of the time we still do 1 week.
Okay.
that's where the discovery, the kickoff, and those types of phases are really important, because we try to say, a lot of people actually come to us with like the RFP type process, right? Where it's like, okay, we've got a 500,000 euro budget, and over the next year we want to accomplish this, and we try to be accommodating and say, okay, well, we think that's actually a reasonable budget for what you want to accomplish, or that's an unreasonable budget, and that's based on a lot of the research that we try and do with you. So sometimes we'll do unpaid research, so they come to us and it's just kind of you know what, we'll do a little bit of kicking the tires and figuring out what this project might look like if we take it on. But then other companies will pay us for like an actual discovery phase where we spend a week or two just trying to figure out, okay, if you're going to spend this much money up front, we feel like we know enough about the projects and the way that code works and things like that, that we can give you an accurate assessment on whether or not that's going to be a useful spend of your money or not, right? Yeah, we haven't had any real problems with any of the larger projects that we do in taking that on a week-by-week basis, with the idea that, hey, in the first 2-3 weeks, we did come up with an actual, design plan, a sprint plan, and things like that for, where we do want to be in the future. But the actual breakdown of the work by work or week by week is just simply, this is a week of work that we can get towards that goal.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And last question, sorry guys. I missed a little bit about politics, because when you have a project where you have like 2 or 3 companies, and you will figure out that you will have to deal with a horrible department called marketing. You will have external developers telling you the code of your developers is crap. You will have your developers telling you the code of the external developers is crap. So how do you deal with politics like that?
We actually have a really great business manager, Chris, who takes care of a lot of that. So he's sort of the shield in between most of the politics like that, which is awesome. I recommend everyone find themselves a Chris Keithlin. It does really help that we're shielded from a lot of that stuff. We try to protect ourselves in most meetings from having, our ideas sort of be, overrun by someone else. We try to get back to, as this gentleman said, like, everyone's equal in this meeting, and just because, Lily talked about the highest paid opinion yesterday, just because you're the most paid or you're the most senior or whatever else doesn't mean that you have the best ideas. So we try to sort of, level everyone off in every meeting, and sometimes we've honestly had that go really poorly, where, people are yelling and screaming, and that's where Chris has kind of stepped in and said, like, hey, these are human beings, they're people, you can't treat them this way, you can't just, walk in and sort of roll over them. So that's definitely a very delicate subject a lot of the time. We've been involved in a few of those projects now, so. All right, any more? No? Yeah, can't really see.
Do you ever have multiple projects running at the same time? Because we have that.
Yeah, how
so
many?
We have multiple clients even.
Yeah, we've probably got about 7 or 8 running right now, and that's with a staff of 16 developers full-time. So yeah, a lot of people are sort of mixed up and across the projects. That's why we sort of believe in this as a way of operating all of our projects the same way, so that you can jump back and forth on projects, and hopefully, if all the processes have been followed correctly, it's very easy to jump on and off another project, because hopefully, there's wireframes in place, designs have been discussed and things like that. This definitely helps in that mindset where, we've actually done different experiments with that internally, where we've actually tried, for the morning, we're going to work on one project, and the afternoon we'll work on a different one. And for 5 days in the week, we're going to try that. And then at the end of the week, we kind of went like, that was garbage. Like, trying to context switch halfway through a day really sucks. So then we tried sort of, okay, well, what if Monday and Tuesday we work on this project, Wednesday, Thursday we work on the other project? Well, that worked a little bit better. And then now we're still experimenting with that kind of stuff, with how can we put more people on different projects together in certain teams and things like that. So yeah, we certainly work a lot with that.
Thanks.